Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the arguments around how the Ukraine crisis could impact the cost of living and focusing on particular impacts of losing access to Russian gas supplies, and to ask who would lose the most from such an outcome. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'm going to start and say, first of all, that I saw some words of wisdom regarding the current conflict and thought I would pass them on. We are being bombarded with information about how the conflict is going. Not all accounts will be truthful. In fact, many will not. You may see images or even videos purporting to be one thing but actually being another. Some of them may even be from years ago. So I'm going to avoid referring to any images or videos or even accounts on any platform unless I am very confident as to their veracity. But anyway, on to the sort of general purpose of this video. Now, it's also worth bearing in mind that this story is incredibly important to us because it will affect our day-to-day lives. I'd like to say that it is because of the human tragedy, but those exist around the world. Even ones created by allowing psychotic megalomaniacs to rule the affairs of powerful countries, the situation between Russia and Ukraine, not all that unlike that of Saudi Arabia and Yemen, is it? But we don't seem to care so much about that. That's not wall-to-wall news, is it? Even to the extent that our government is actively supporting the aggressors in that travesty. I mean, it is in this one, I suppose, but not openly. So despite what genuine sympathy people will feel, this will be a bigger talking point and for longer because it is close to home and our lives will be materially impacted by it. The sad thing is that our government will welcome it. You know, it was about to become much trickier to blame external factors for their economic mismanagement. You know, they used to blame the EU. Oh, we left the EU, can't do that anymore. Oh, COVID, brilliant. No, we've declared COVID's over. What do we have now? Well, now they have a new crisis to blame. There have been another round of sanctions, of course, and no doubt these will be ramped up rather than having all been put in place from the start, where it might have made some difference. No, another round of sanctions announced by Europe, the United States, the UK. Again, the UK has ramped up sanctions. It's not that they're worthless, but nowhere near as far and as fast as we can go. In fact, Boris Johnson went on television to address the nation at midday on Thursday to essentially say that he was going to do nothing of any great consequence. He actually said that. He actually said that the sanctions he was putting in place would not change anything in the short term. Yes, he made a policy intention of defeating Vladimir Putin, but what did he say he was going to contribute to the cause? He suggested that his sanctions would not bring him to heel. He said this was going to go for a very long time. The implication is that he sees defeat for this lunatic in years, not anytime soon. I say lunatic, it's not actually very fair, is it? I think he knows exactly what he's doing. You know, people saying, what was it? The Czech, I can't remember, the Czech Prime Minister maybe, senior member of the Czech government anyway, said he didn't think that Putin would be insane enough to invade Ukraine. It's not insanity, is it? It would be insanity if the world reacted very strongly and stopped him in his tracks, because then he'd have made a massive miscalculation. But that's not what's happened. As far as I can tell, he hasn't made a miscalculation. You know. But make no mistake, the UK government has the power to ruin Putin financially. Financially. His stolen wealth has largely been entrusted to the UK and British overseas territories because of our blind eyes. We could open them and act. Putin would have made the miscalculation of his life, and that would be that. But like I said, he hasn't miscalculated, has he? Because we're not doing that. He may indeed be defeated. Invading European countries tends to go very badly. Has done for a long time now. But he's 69 years old, nearly 70. His defeat may come from Father Time rather than any action from us. And in justifying our pathetic sanctions against Putin, Conservatives are trying to argue that such sanctions would harm our cost of living. Yes, some sanctions would, of course. But there are a couple of things to say here. The first is that there are sanctions which may be applied, which we are not applying, which will not harm the pockets of ordinary UK residents. We could cancel visas for those with close links to Putin. People keep pointing out, oh, we can remove the right of residency for groomed teenage girls, can't we? Even remove their citizenship, make them stateless. But we can't do it for Russians with close links to Putin. How many are currently living in Britain right now? How many have got children in our schools? Send them back. That would not harm our economy, would it? Part of the Kremlin's money laundering programme involved buying up properties in London and leaving them empty. Confiscate them. Could just be temporary for now. And if not resolved in a few years, sell them off. In the same way the police sell off a criminal's assets to recover the proceeds of crime. How would that harm our economy? Would boost it if the money raised were actually pumped back into public services. But then the second thing to think is, yes, there are some sanctions that inevitably would need to apply that could cause prices to increase, indeed. But the thing is, those price increases are already happening and will continue to happen. You know, the greater cost is doing nothing. We know this. War disrupts trade. This is why the EU and its forerunners work so well. The base concept, ultimately the concept was to prevent war between the major powers of Europe. The Second World War had to be it. That was it now. Let's stop this madness. Bind them together in trade. War disrupts trade. Make these European powers interdependent and you prevent them going to war with one another. And it worked. Nations that were at war for over 1,000 years, they only changed which side they were on, suddenly knew an unprecedented level of peace. War is anathema to trade. If you instigate or even permit war, you hit trade. It can be no other way. If you allow the war to spill out across a larger region, as failing to tackle Putin now will, then trade is hit even harder. This will mean an increase in the cost of living. And when it comes to affected trade, it is widespread. But by far the most talked about commodity here is gas. Russia supplies Europe with quite a lot of gas. Putin could shut off gas supplies. Europe could stop importing Russian gas. Could either side cope? Would either side make that decision? Or are they interdependent, or does one side need it more than the other? Well, Europe first. There are some who will say that the UK doesn't import that much gas from Russia, so the impact on us will be relatively mild, say, compared to someone like Germany. This is failing to understand, however, the network of supply. Very common for particularly Brexit supporters. See, we may not get as much gas from Russia, but we do use a lot of gas. Gas supplies that will be used more by countries that do currently use a lot of gas from Russia. Because let's say all of a sudden you cut off access to Russian gas on either side, whoever did it, where would the people that do get a lot of gas from Russia suddenly go? Same market that we get ours from. So the demand would be higher, the supply lower. And so the price would increase, and it would increase for us as well. And it would that's all there is to it. A Eurostat chart here indicates the countries most reliant currently on Russian gas. We're in there. We're a long way off some of the others. So the thing is then, you would ask, are there alternative supplies for Europe? Yes, actually. First of all, there are reserves. I mean, I've bemoaned recently the dumbasses in the Conservative government a few years ago selling off our reserves, but Europe in general has significant reserves. If gas from Russia were cut off, Europe could manage with a combination with these and liquefied natural gas, potentially from China. The United States has also been working on supplies in order to remove a very obvious source of weakness amongst European powers, essential to make sanctions bite. At the end of the day, in order for the major powers to impose tougher sanctions on Russia, we need to make sure that those powers lose their reliance on Russia for anything. You know, because that's the only way you can isolate them. Heads of government do not fancy isolating Russia in a way that harms their national interest. And it's not necessarily just selfish either. It is an unfortunate feature of politics. People like myself, ordinary citizens, may well say we should apply tough sanctions now because we know we're going to have to anyway. And the pain may be, yes, there may be pain, but we know we're going to suffer more pain if we just leave it longer. But then if they did that, all of a sudden people in the media, we know who they are, would be saying, oh, we didn't need to go so far. Oh, we've now hurt ourselves. We didn't actually have to go that far. Because here's the thing, and I've said this before, there's a bar, isn't there, for Putin? There's a bar. You apply sanctions that go above that bar and he will have to retreat. There's no option. And it's like countries are thinking, well, we don't want to overshoot the bar too much. We only need to do just enough. It's binary. We flip the switch. Just enough to make either Russia's generals get rid of Putin or Putin himself to withdraw. So we don't want to go too far. So they keep tentatively moving up to it because they don't actually know where the bar is. That's the problem. But although Europe could weather the storm, there would be an increase in the cost of gas and therefore energy. We already have a high increase in the cost of energy in Britain because the government will not redress the balance with taxes on energy companies, as France, for example, have done. But the point is that supplies would not be hit as such. We can get the supplies. They would just cost more money. In addition, I've also seen it suggest that Putin could really shoot himself in the foot if he chose to cut off gas supplies. Because there would be a bit of a chain reaction here. First of all, Europe would get by. Cost of living would go up, but there would be no blackouts. So the threat is limited from that point of view. Second, what happens when you cut off those supplies? Customers go elsewhere. It reminds me of the story of the coal miner strikes in the 80s. Now, I grew up in a mining village. And what happened, I found out many years later as a teacher, taking students to the large power station near me, Drax Power Station, the largest coal-fired power station in the country. It's now sort of transitioning away from coal. And we were told that what happened during those mine strikes, because obviously you couldn't get coal. Coal-fired power station can't just not have coal. And they used to get them from the Yorkshire coalfields right next door. So they had to go into the international market, and they found that they could get coal from Canada. And it would be shipped all the way down the west coast of America, across the Panama Canal, across the Atlantic, all the way around Britain to Immingham Docks. Don't need to worry where that is. It's just around the other side of Britain, on the east side of Britain, and then to Drax. And it worked out cheaper to do that than to get it from a few miles down the road. Now, there's a similar thing here, really. You know, if it's cut off from Russia's end, Europe will have to get by. They're forced into it. There's no option. They will have to get by with other supplies. They'll have to go elsewhere. They can't manage on reserves forever. And also, they're using those reserves in summer. They need to make sure they've got those reserves built back up for winter. So they're going to have to act quickly. They'll need a reliable supply. They can go elsewhere. Long term, they can wean themselves off gas much more. But short term, there are supplies around the world available. China being the obvious, as I say. And then the third, inevitable reaction is speaking of China, well, they've been using Russian gas of late. Now, there's a couple of options here. If Putin cuts off gas to the West, this all escalates with the West. The East may decide one of two things. They may decide that Russia is not a reliable supplier, and all of a sudden Europe wants a lot more of their supplies, and China moves more closely with Europe on this matter, and Russia isolates itself. Now, there is an opposite view, that in actual fact, if Russia creates this schism with Europe, that it will want to engage much more closely with China itself, and that you could end up with pushing China close to Russia from this. But as I say, if the commercial benefits to China for working more closely with Europe are greater, Russia could actually end up isolating itself here. And in one fell swoop, Russia loses basically all of its customers, not just for the short term, where Putin presumably has factored in. He must have factored in the loss of revenue short term, but longer term, now that would be a problem. For a nation whose little wealth comes from its natural resources. I mean, Russia's huge geographically. It's not very rich. It's not very wealthy. What wealth it does get is from natural resources. Put simply, Putin may well threaten Europe with a shut off of supplies. And I'm not saying he wouldn't do it, and I'm certainly not saying there'd be no impact, but the consequences, though they cannot be foreseen with perfect acuity, at least not by me, could easily hurt Russia much more than Europe. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.